December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
On this date in history, the United States of America was attacked on their own soil. The attack on Pearl Harbor shook the country to its very core and led to their involvement in World War II. However, this tragic event would have never existed if perhaps one of history's most unknown battles had never taken place. In the steppe regions of Mongolia, a small border dispute shaped the map of the Second World War. This is a battle of Khalkhin Gol.
To the Japanese, this battle was known as the Nomahan Incident and the Battle of Khalkhin Gol by the Russians. It occurred in Manchuria, the puppet state of Japan, as well as Mongolia, which was in alliance with Russia. Before this war had begun, plenty of friction between Emperor Hirohito and Joseph Stalin. Multiple wars occurred previously, but this was the deadliest of them all. It lasted 4 months with 40 to 50,000 casualties. This was just a small undeclared war, but the first to be a limited war in the modern age.
On May 11, 1939, a small Mongolian cavalry unit marched near Nomahan to search for grazing land for their horses, and were driven out by a Manchurian cavalry. 2 days later, the enraged Mongolians returned with a sizable force and occupied the territory.
The aggressive Japanese army took this as an excuse to move into the Russian territory and dispatched onto Mongolia on the 14th of May, 1939. With 2 regiments from the Japanese 23rd Division, they were able to drive the Mongolian forces back across the river. The aggression was under the commander's shoot now, ask questions later basis. Without this basis, the Battle of Khalkhin Gol could have essentially been avoided.
Immediately after this engagement, both sides built up strength in the area. The Japanese moved 30,000 men towards Mongolia, while Moscow dispatched Lieutenant General Georgy Zhukov to lead the offensive. He arrived in the area on June 5, 1939, with many armored cars and tanks.
On June 27, 1939, the Japanese 2nd Air Brigade attacked an airfield in Mongolia. Both sides lost several aircraft. This attack was conducted by the Japanese army without approval from Tokyo. After learning of the attack, Tokyo ordered no further airstrikes to be launched. More than 200 aircraft were lost in this attack.
At the end of June 1939, Lieutenant General Michitaro of the Japanese 23rd Division was given the permission to attack. He planned for a 2-prong approach, with one prong marching at the Ben-Sagan Hill and then the Kawatama Bridge, with the other prong would attack the Soviet positions on the eastern bank of the river Khalkhin Gol and then move north to the Holston River. As the first prong crossed the Khalkhin Gol, Zhukov launched a counterattack with 450 tanks and armored cars without infantry support. The Soviet armored force attacked the Japanese on 3 sides, forcing the Japanese soldiers to fall back to the river on July 5th. Meanwhile, the second prong attacked beginning on the night of July 2. The second prong suffered the loss of over half of its armored vehicles and was driven back by the Soviet counterattack on July 9th. Over the next 2 weeks, the 2 sides continuously engaged in battle with one another, though none of the engagements were significant. As the Japanese logistics began to show signs of strain due to a limited amount of trucks available, Zhukov was able to assemble a force of 2,600 trucks to bring supplies to his troops. On July 2nd, the Japanese launched another major assault, sending the 64th and 72nd Regiments to attack Soviet forces on the Kawatama Bridge. The attack began with a 2-day artillery bombardment, but the infantry was not able to take the bridge, and the attack was withdrawn on July 25th. The Japanese officers planned to regroup over the next month and attack again at the end of August. They would not be given the chance. On August 20, 1939, Zhukov crossed the river with a 57,000-strong unit force consisting of 498 BT-5 tanks, a motorized infantry, air support with 250 aircraft, and 2 Mongolian cavalry units. Opposing them, the Japanese only fielded 2 light armor divisions. This was the attack, that would decide the Battle of Khalkhin Gol.
The Soviet frontal assault with infantry and artillery pinned down the Japanese in the center of the line. But Zhukov put most of his mobile forces, his tanks and mechanized infantry, on the wings. And these forces swept around the left and right side, around behind the Japanese. And the Soviet northern force and the Soviet southern force they outflanked the Japanese. They moved around the outside and came in behind them like two arms reaching around behind and joining hands, so that the Japanese were surrounded in what amounted to a kind of a ring of steel. And then, because of the vastly superior Soviet firepower, this ring of steel just tightened and tightened and tightened over the next week in a grinding battle of annihilation, just grinding the Japanese down, constricting them into a smaller and smaller pocket, until finally they were almost all wiped out.
On September 15th, 1939, the Japanese signed a ceasefire to be in effect the following day, and agreed to the borders claimed by Mongolia. Due to this loss, the Japanese military leaders lost faith in its army and believed that victory would be won by their navy. This led to the Japanese push into the Pacific, and eventually led to the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. This surprise attack is what caused the United States to enter World War II. However, maybe the biggest impact that this battle had on the turnout of World War II could have best been seen at the Battle of Stalingrad. This epic 5-month battle proved to be the turning point in World War II. The defense of the Soviet city was led by a newly appointed general who had won a Hero of the Soviet Union award, General Georgy Zhukov, the one who had beaten the Japanese at the Battle of Khalkhin Gol. Because of his victory in Mongolia, Zhukov ensured that the Soviets would only have to fight a war on one front. This would prove to be invaluable, as he would need most of his resources at Stalingrad. In the end, he won with his trademark move, the same one he used 4 years earlier in Mongolia, a double envelopment, slowly surrounding and destroying the Nazi war machine. Because of this decisive victory, Zhukov was known as the man who broke the Nazis' back, the Eisenhower of the Soviet Union, as he and his army pushed in from the east, and the United States and England came in from the west. And then, on April 30th, 1945, it was suddenly all over. The Führer, Adolf Hitler, had killed himself, facing the inevitable defeat, ending the 1,000-year Reich. Victory in Europe had been won. Because of his many victories, Georgy Zhukov became a major icon for Soviet power. His popularity soared in the USSR, having monuments made for him, even planets named after him. His popularity rivaled even that of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, who had him demoted because of it. It wasn't until later, when Stalin died, that Georgy Zhukov's career recovered, when he became the Minister of Defense. The events of World War II helped shape the world into what it is today. And to think, the world looks like it does today, all because some Mongolian cavalry decided to cross a line. This is the Battle of Khalkhin Gol, history's most forgotten battle.